everyone, at 1995 here in the video games and fanfiction plot with a new story for you all. It is called His Queen. If you guys don't know, it's another Transformers fanfiction, and I do hope you enjoy this story. And remember, I do not own the Transformers Prime series or this story. I give full credit to its author Syzzy WinterFalls 13 on Quotev. Now on to the story. Trust of others. Optimus, have you seen my laptop? I asked, looking under the couch. Wherever it is, Optimus stated, looking at the screen. I doubt it is under the couch. I groaned, scraping my knees as I got up. I can't find it anywhere. I cried, looking at my guardian. Optimus turned to me, examining my upset expression. He looked back to the computer, lowering his shoulders a bit. Have you checked the ventilation system? I sighed, rubbing my head. Yes. And I also checked the rafters. I exclaimed, looking up. Sometimes, you are no help at all. Optimus shook his head, and watched me as I frantically looked around. Explain to me why you need the laptop. He addressed, raising an optical ridge. I groaned once again, becoming frustrated. If I don't have my laptop, I can't edit my music. If I can't edit my music, I can't send it to the record company. If I can't send it to the record company, I will not be on the record label. I implied, throwing some of Ratchet's stuff around. I could tell that Optimus was watching in amusement as I cursed to myself, tossing some of the equipment. You do realize that Ratchet will not be happy that you are messing with his equipment? He interrupted, receiving a snowball to the helm. Yes, Optimus, I do realize that. I remarked, sass dripping off my words, but I really don't care what that grouch thinks when my human career is on the line. Myko and Bulkhead walked in, conversing about activities that they could do. Myko! I yelled, hearing the teenager talk, do you know where my laptop went? Myko looked at me, and smirked, if I did, I wouldn't remember. I stopped searching, feeling a vibration in my pocket. What could that be? I looked at the bright screen, leaning my head in. Street race tonight at 10. Better be there, Feral. I smirked at my given street name, and looked at the contact number. Hello, bartender. I started typing fast, not wanting the others to see. I will be there. Just make sure no one takes my spot in line. I sent the message, and slipped the phone in my pocket. My chest rised steadily, the first time in a while. Tonight, I'm just going to let loose. My thoughts were interrupted, a slight ping reaching my ears. I looked up, turning to the screen. Ratchet was now observing. Optimus, I'm receiving a signal on a restricted band. Ratchet said, looking at the jumble of shapes and numbers I didn't understand. It appears to be coming from a starship inside this solar system. The screen whirred, sounding a lot like the computers in the military intelligence center back at home. I scoffed, watching the symbol shift around. It's an Autobot identification beacon. Ratchet claimed, and I raised my eyebrows. I can't handle more of y'all. I wailed, face bombing. Jack and Raph were on a catwalk, leaning on the rail. So there are other bots out there? Jack asked, making me smirk. The masses scattered to the galaxies when Cybertron finally went dark. RC replied, motioning upward, but cons have been known to bait traps with false beacons. I sighed, shaking my head. I do wonder why they haven't come up with a way to prevent that. My eyes darted across the screen, squinting at the symbols. How could it be that close to Earth without us knowing? The satellite stationed in the asteroid belt should have picked it up. I frowned, leaning on one leg. Optimus could see my uneasiness and looked to the screen. Unknown vessel, this is Autobot Outpost Omega 1. Identify yourself. Optimus ordered, waiting for a response. I could hear some static from the other end, before a voice called back. I've had warmer welcomes from Decepticon combat brigades. He was male, and from Bulkhead's reaction, an Autobot. Wheeljack? Bulkhead gasped, making Myko lose her balance. You old con crusher. What are you doing all the way out here? He walked up to the screen, Myko trying to not fall off. Bulkhead? That you? The bot on the other line asked, what's with all the security? I chuckled, and started heading towards the boys. The rock we're on is crawling with cons and other weird creatures. Bulkhead explained, earning a small growl from me. How soon can you get here and even the odds? The screen made a blip, and I had to refrain from clenching my fist on reaction. Sometime tomorrow if I put metal to the pedal. Wheeljack said, and I bit my cheek. They have some pretty odd phrases. Maiko said something about having another bot around, but I was distracted by a buzzing sound. Where is that coming from? Wheeljack, Optimus said, and I turned towards him. His voice seemingly always catches my attention. I know of him by reputation only. Can you verify his voice print? He asked Bulkhead. He is 1000% the real deal, Optimus. Bulkhead clarified, and I smiled, eyes darting from place to place. We will send landing coordinates, Wheeljack. Optimus said, looking at the screen. Safe journey. I rolled my head, popping my neck. See you soon, buddy. I'll make sure you get a proper welcome. Bulkhead chimed, as I looked to it. By the way, watch out for any giant flying creatures. They protect their territory and don't take kindly to trespassers. I broke in, stretching my back. Ratchet got off the communication, and I leaned onto the railing, sliding in front of the computer. So, who's their boyfriend? RC asked Bulk, making him chuckle. Me and Jackie go way back. Bulkhead explained happily, we were part of the same war unit, the Wreckers, which means the cons are gonna wish he never found us. I jumped down, and dropped on all fours. Meanwhile, my laptop is missing, which also means that some valuable information is missing. And I need help finding it. Molly, you tired? I glared at Jack, clenching my fists. What do you think? I growled, rolling my shoulders. Right, don't ask if you already know the answer. Jack stammered, looking away. I sighed, rubbing my sore shoulders. I just had a long night. My shoulders are dead, my legs feel like lead, and my back has more cricks than I can count. It was worth the first place though. Wheeljack's ship is approaching the landing zone. RC said, Maiko gasping. The blip got closer to the destination, and from what I know, 2 dragon guards were tailing close below him. I bit my lower lip, hoping he doesn't see them as a threat. You think he's here to visit? Raphael asked. I pulled my jacket a little closer, opening up the wings slits. Maybe he'll stay. Maiko bounced. Have to find his own human though. I chuckled, rubbing my back. I'm so friggin' sore. I glance at Ratchet, who is starting up the ground bridge. Ground bridge cycling up. He confirms, and the lever sparks. I laugh, knowing what caused this a few days ago. Blasted scriptlets. Ratchet complains, hitting his fist on the lever to make the screen show up. Equipment hasn't been the same since the infestation. He claimed, and I agreed, nodding my head. The electric system has been weird for the past few days. So, Wheeljack's gonna land halfway around the world? Jack questioned, and I pondered on that thought. We can't risk revealing the location of our base, Optimus replied, waving his hand, just in case the Decepticons are tracking Wheeljack's ship. He looked at me, and I smiled. And if the Decepticons are tracking his ship, I got 2 dragons making sure it doesn't get too serious. It wasn't really my choice, a kingdom precaution. I beamed, my teeth getting ever so sharper. Optimus smiled at me, just enough for me to notice. Maiko walked down the catwalk to another platform, and I leaned on the railing as the others followed her. So, Optimus, I started, turning my head towards him, what exactly is going to happen once Wheeljack arrives? He looked at me and thought, and he finally spoke when a blush started to creep its way up my face. In all honesty, what will happen when Wheeljack arrives is not for certain. We will just have to wait and see. I sighed, nodding in understanding. Let's just hope we won't have to encounter any Decepticons. His optics started towards me, and they watched me intently as I walked down to Maiko. And tonight we are gonna party. Bulkhead shouted, and Maiko smiled, sweet. I laughed, and smiled as well. I mean, who doesn't love a good party? My ears were then blared with an alarm making me cover my ear canals. I looked up to the screen, and saw 5 red blips behind Wheeljack. Bogies closing fast on Wheeljack's position. RC stated, narrowing her optics. Con scum. Bulkhead yelled, agitated. I growled, and put my finger to my newly updated earpiece. Soldier I in Soldier 4, do you read? I barked, trying to get a hold of the two drakes. Mom, this is Soldier 4. We have just entered Sandwing territory and the ship is being attacked. Shall we proceed to defensive maneuvers? The Drake responded, the gunshots in the background. Permission granted. Reinforcements are on their way. If the defendee does not require help, you may be dismissed. I lifted my finger off the piece, and nodded at Optimus. Open up the bridge, Ratchet. We're missing all the action. Bulkhead rushed, waiting to fight. Ratchet activated the ground bridge. I will prepare sick bay. Ratchet said, and Bulkhead chuckled. 2-4. The cons? This is Wheeljack we're talking about. He, RC, and Bumblebee ran in, while Optimus and I stayed behind. So, we not going? I asked, looking up. Prime nodded, and I looked back to the ground bridge. I hope the Sandwings won't be too aggravated. I chuckled, holding a hand to my mouth. They ran in as quick as they did when they ran out, with a white, red, and green mech with them. Not too shabby. But something isn't right. I thought, and the portal crackled off, sparks flying again from the console. Yeah, we have more things to fix. Ratchet groaned, scowling at the faulty console. Jackie, come here. Bulkhead pushed Wheeljack forward, meet my other best buddy, Maiko. She can wreck with the best of us. I watched Maiko walk down the stairs, trying to figure out what is up. Maybe it's the fact that I still can't find my laptop. I scowled, and glared at Ratchet. He had something to do with it. Hiya. She greeted, probably the calmest I've ever seen her since she got a sugar crash eating a bunch of sugar cubes. Wheeljack leaned in, smirking, you keeping Bulkhead out of trouble? Maiko shrugs, I try. But trouble finds us anyways. I eyed him carefully, and stalked around. We're gonna get along just fine. Optimus held out his hand for me, and I was taken back for a second before I hopped on. He walked towards Wheeljack, setting me on his shoulder. Optimus Prime, it's a privilege. Wheeljack said, walking to him. Likewise, soldier. Optimus smiled, for real. I rushed to take my phone out and started to secretly snap pictures of that moment. I can't believe I caught this on camera. I grinned, hearing him speak. What have you to report from your long journey? He asked Wheeljack. Been bouncing from rock to rock, searching for signs of friend or foe. Wheeljack answered, looking back to Bulkhead, now I find both. I nodded, waiting for my turn to speak. We are few, but strong. Optimus clarified, looking at me, we have suffered losses. But we have grown. And we would relish welcoming a new member into our fold. I smiled, standing up on his shoulder. Wheeljack glanced at me, but looked back at Optimus. I would be honored. He smiled, and Bulkhead looked like he was about to burst into confetti. Then let's get this party started. They chest bumped, and I giggled, looking at Optimus. Well, it's going to be a long night. Maiko. If you play It's Not My Fault one more time, I'm going to scream. I yelled at her as she played the weird guitar solo she made up. No thank you. She scoffed, strumming away. I growled, and watched Bulkhead and Wheeljack throw a metal ball at each other. Come on, Raph. Show us some moves. Maiko said, playing a different chord. This should be interesting. I commented, knowing that he can do some pretty good breakdancing. Oh, alright. He sighed, fixing his glasses. I laughed, and got up. He stood up, stiff, and started doing the robot. Oh boo. He needs to be dancing to some electric music. I thought, and rolled my eyes. B started dancing as well, which was very amusing. Wow. So original, Raph. I joked, leaning on my hand. I smirked, and started messing with my phone. Where's Optimus? I lifted my head, turning to Jack and RC. "Yeah," I chimed, "where is the big bot?" RC watched the meshes chuck the ball at one another, went for a drive. She turned to look at us, eyeing me for a second. "Primes don't party." I hummed, looking down. "I might drive around, as well," I added, walking away. "I should really check on my house. Make sure that my friends haven't broke in and trashed the place." I smiled, waving at them. I took out my baton, and in a blink of an eye, was speeding down out the exit. I lied. I wasn't going to check out my house. I was going to find Optimus. Hee hee, now where did that Simi go? I asked myself, looking around the desert. My wandering eyes snatch onto the forest, its trees swaying in the breeze. Wouldn't hurt to check, I think, and head towards the woods. The dirt flares up in front and back of the bike, and I can bet you that people could see the light speeding down the desert. I wonder. I murmured, approaching the rock jutting out of the ground. I zoomed into the forest, jumping off the bike. I looked around, ears picking up the slightest sway of a leaf. Cuffing my hands around my mouth, I shout, "Optimus! Where are you?" I lowered my hands, waiting. Nothing. Perfect. I sigh, and wandered around, choosing paths at random. Where did he go? I sang, and looked up. I started humming the tune of "Everything Is Alright" by Laura Shijara, strolling into the brush. "Chin up. I can't step into the spotlight," she said. "I'm sad." Simply without any words. I closed my eyes, hearing the piano play in my head. I sighed, eyes looking softly ahead. The sound of the water flowed like a melody into my thoughts, guiding me to the lake. Optimus is right. This place is so calming. I never want to leave it sometimes. I smiled, thinking about the lake, my music, Optimus. My friends, my brothers, the kids, Optimus. I have a problem. I take a different turn, rather than heading straight towards the lake. The trail ends sharply, and the cliff appears. "Pretty," I said calmly, walking out of the woods. And lo and behold, Optimus is sitting on the other side of the lake. "Found ya." I smirked, and stalked down the rocky cliff. I took off my shoes, and approached the shore. The water was nice, and I slunked in, not caring about my clothes being wet, head going underwater. Bubbles came out of my mouth, and my hair fanned around me. I looked up, seeing the moonlight glisten on the water. Looking down, the water turned dark below me, weed reaching up to the sun. Wow! It is really deep, I thought, surprised. Oxygen floated out of my nostrils, and I followed them up to the surface. I started to think. What would be fun to do right now? Swim up to Optimus underwater and scare him, that's what. I grinned, and started to kick my legs like a mermaid, a habit when you usually swim as one in real life. It takes a couple of seconds, not wanting to disturb the surface while swimming up to him. My head bobs in the water, the liquid parting to let me through. I dove deeper as I got closer, taking as few of breaths as possible. I flattened against a wall, staring up. The water was clear from where I was, and I saw Optimus talking to himself. He stared out into the water, servo on his faceplate. He seemed conflicted. I tilted my head, and floated up a ways. My body, suspended in fluid, clothes soaked in water, leaned up against the wall, and I listened. He murmured softly, moving occasionally. I couldn't understand parts of it, but the way he talked made it seem like he was, well, confused. I smiled sweetly, and kicked to the surface. I took a deep breath, emerging out of the water. "Hello, Optimus." I blinked, flashing a grin. He was startled, my presence shaking him from his thoughts. "Molly. I didn't know you were here." He stuttered, catching me off guard. He never has anything other than that flat tone. "I just got here." I beamed, and floated on my back. "What are you doing here, Optimus?" His optics softened, still wondering how I got here. I needed to think over some thoughts. He replied, resting his hand on a boulder. I nodded in understanding, and crawled up on shore. You could have at least me told so. I suggested, and jumped onto a rock, crossing my legs. I am sorry if I caused any worry. He apologized for no reason. I shook my head, wringing out my hair. I was not worried, Optimus. I assured, blinking softly, just curious. I smiled, opening my eyes. My clothes clung to my wet skin, showing some of my usually well-hidden curves. He was staring at me, again. My cheeks turned rosy, noticing that my shirt was see-through around the midriff. I might need to, change clothes. I chuckled nervously, looking down at my soaked shirt. I looked down in embarrassment, and got up. I'll be going now. I stepped into the woods, till I was pulled back by my arm. Wait. I looked over my shoulder, blinking at Optimus. Please stay. He pleaded, his optics saying it all. I sighed, and nodded. Oh, okay. I walked back to the rock, and laid down on it. I wouldn't want to bother you though. He looked down at me, smiling. And when have I ever been bothered by you? He replied, relaxing. I giggled, sitting up, I don't know. I am told I can be very annoying. He chuckled, and I smiled. If you ever annoyed me, Optimus assured, smiling, I would tell you. He sat down, putting his pets in the water. Well, at least you're honest. I stated, looking at him from the upper corner of my eyes. I kicked my feet, looking out onto the water. I'm surprised you even came out here, though. I confessed, sighing. I saw him turn his head towards me, and I tried to restrain myself from looking at his optics. Why would I not? He asked, raising an eyebrow. I took a deep breath, trying to avoid his gaze. I wouldn't have thought you would come to a place that we have only been to twice. I thought back to when we came to shoot a video a week back. Raph was pushed into the water. His mouth turned upwards a little, and he scooped me up in his servo. Gah! I gasped, holding onto his thumb for support. It is one of the few places I can go to clear my processors. He explained, raising me to his facial plates. I would ask you the same thing. He continued, looking at me. I gave him a puzzling look, before realizing. Oh, why I came out here. Well. I started, pulling my knees to my chest. It was getting crowded. I needed some fresh air. He wasn't taking it, giving me that stern look. I sighed, blowing my hair out of my face, and I wanted to see you. I looked down, and moved my hair behind my ear. Molly. He started, gazing at me before his eyes caught something else. Yes? I questioned, looking behind me. Why is the lake glowing? He asks, staring out into it. I notice the faint glow of light coming from the middle of the lake. I do not know. I said, looking out, want to find out? I jumped down from his hand, landing in the water. How can I communicate with him underwater? It's not like he knows aquatic. I ponder, and drift up. I gasp for air, and motion my head towards the water. Come on. The water's nice. I smile, and swim out a ways. He looks skeptically at the lake, then at me, and steps in. There you go. I smirk, and swim up to him. It's deep to me, probably 20 feet where I am now. But it gets about 60 feet in depth where the light is. I state, and look at him. He could touch the ground, the water going about waist level for him. Are you sure about that? He asked, wading out farther. I nod my head, floating on my back, positive. Now let's go deep. I took a deep breath, and dove under, waiting for Optimus. Bubbles blew off of him, as he submerged into the water. His optics glowed through the water, lighting up his face. My face glowed from the hue coming from his optics, and I waved downwards. I started kicking downwards, bubbles coming off my body as it parted the water. I could feel the drawback as Optimus followed me, making it a struggle to swim through. The bottom dropped off, reaching about 30-40 feet in depth. I need to communicate with Optimus. We need to go deeper. I frowned, and turned backwards. I put out my hand, signaling for him to stop. He tilted his head, raising an eyebrow. How am I going to tell him this? I started twisting my hand around, bending my fingers a couple times, then pointing down. I starts to process my movements, and nodded. I smiled, and started to swim down. It is getting very dark. I squint down, looking for the light. It shined through the weed, the water glistened in the rays. Interesting. Optimus kicked closer, fancily realizing how deep it actually is. I chuckled in my head, and parted some of the weed. Let's hope he can pass through it without entangling himself. I hoped, and looked back to him. He nodded, making an entryway for us to go through. I kicked harder, avoiding the vegetation around me. Optimus had some trouble, pulling some of it off him as he swam down. The light got brighter and brighter, shimmering in the clear darkness. Oh my god. The weeds surrounded a deep indention in the earth, it measuring around 15 feet in diameter. The light radiated from the center of it, and I look at Optimus, who was just as shocked as I was. I tilt my head towards it, motioning him to follow. I start diving down towards it, spreading the water out with my hands, which started to web. Reaching the floor, I stirred up some silt, not as much as Optimus did, which was like a cloud of sand. The light appeared to be coming from a hole in the earth, an entrance to the underground cavern system that runs under all of the earth. That Animalians only knew about. Optimus swam around me, reaching the other side of the entry. He stared into it, not seeing why the hole was glowing. I smiled, and touched the barrier. It rippled, green and blue light coming out in waves. He jerked back, blinking in surprise. I look at him, as he stared at it in wonder. I caught his attention, pointing upwards. I started swimming up, Prime following me. I started to swim with my legs together, creating more force to push me up. I reached the surface, gasping for air. Oh Optimus! I called down, looking for him. Yes? I literally jumped out of the water, turning around. Optimus! Don't scare me like that! I scolded, splashing him. He guarded his face from the water, chuckling. I apologize. He stated, waving his arms. What was that? He asked, leaning towards me. An entrance to the Earth tunnel system. I replied, swimming to him. His optics focused on me in puzzlement, and I climbed to his shoulder. Long ago, Animalians created a tunnel system to travel without the humans seeing them. I answered as he swam to shore. The barriers are usually made from a spell to prevent non-Animalians from entering without permission from the Queen. He stepped onto shore, and looked at me. Is that how you travel from place to place without interruption? He asked, walking into the forest. Yep. I replied, looking back to the cliff. Can you walk over to the cliff? I need my shoes. I stated, pointing to the limestone. He nodded, and started heading towards there. Thanks. I say, jumping down and grabbing the Nikes. I'm going to go now. Have fun in your thinking. I said, waving goodbye. He seemed disappointed, waving back. See you back at base. He sighed, and I smiled, walking away. The wind picked up, my face prickling. I pick up pace, speeding up with the wind. Myco! I growl, jumping on my bike before I even reach the tree line. The wind rushed past me, my skin crawling from the nerves. The base approached quickly, and I sped up. The doors opened for me automatically, and I roared down the tunnel. Decepticon coward. I heard Bulkhead yell, let the girl go and face me. Myco. The bike drowned out the other's voice, but I didn't care. I don't want him touching Myco. The room comes into view, and I jump off automatically, lunging at the bot holding Myco. I knew something was off about him. I snarled, striking the imposter's face with my claws. Touch her again and I will tear you up more than I am going to now. I roared, as the ground bridge powered on. My wet skin lost grip, and fell off him. Gah! I shouted, landing on my back. Ouch! I groaned, and sat up. Another bot, identical to this one, jumped through, kicking the Decepticon in the helm. He fell, releasing Myco. Good. I growled, and Bulkhead caught her, setting her down with Jack and Raph. She smiled, and they walked up to the real Wheeljack. He was carrying two katanas, and sheathed them when he saw the humans. "I'd shut that hole before the stink comes through," he said, glared at the Decepticon, taking out the swords once again. They circled each other, and I stepped back to let them fight. Bulkhead approached a few steps, pounding his fists, before one of the two held out his katana. "Ugly's mine." Their swords clashed, as they slashed at each other with brute force. "Which one is the real Wheeljack?" Raph asked, stepping back. Maiko pointed at them both, muttering, "I lost track." I groaned, and watched one knee the other in the stomach, slamming him to the ground and taking his sword. "That's my Jackie," Bulk said, looking to be. Wheeljack took off his mask, sheathing his swords. "You, hit the switch," he directed at Ratchet. "It's time to take out the trash." Bulkhead walked up next to him, glaring daggers at the con. "All yours, buddy," Wheeljack said, backing up. Bulkhead squinted at the unconscious con, and picked him up. "Wait," I said, holding up my hand. Bulkhead stopped, looking at me. I smirked, and unsheathed my middle claw. "I've been saving this one for a while." I chuckled, and shot it out of my fist, lodging it right in his optic. "There we go." I nodded, and Bulkhead threw him into the ground bridge. "Good riddance, Maiko," I shouted, grabbing her guitar. "Oh!" Everyone groaned, since they were having fun, dancing. "I think, the music needs to take a different turn." I smirked, and grabbed my phone and speaker. It would help to get a little footloose. I set the music to Footloose, and started dancing to the beat. "Heck yeah! This is my jam!" Jack yelled, and started dancing as well. Raphael laughed, and started dancing. I looked to Maiko, and shimmied over to her. "You know you wanna." I tempted, grabbing her hands. "No," she argued, pulling against me. I spun her out, and tilted her down. "You're having fun." I smiled, and let go of her hand, moving my shoulders. She looked down, and shrugged. "Oh well." She started dancing with me. I would have been tempted to do the jitterbug with her, but I didn't want to embarrass her in front of everyone. I laughed, watching her snap her fingers. "A little lady's never hurts." I smiled, and raced up the catwalk. "Hello, Optimus," I chirped, grinning. He turned to me, smiling. "You look like you're having fun," he observed, and turned back to Wheeljack. Bulkhead was smiling, talking to Jackie. "Now that you're part of Team Prime, we need to pick out a vehicle mode for you. I have some ideas." Bulkhead chimed happily. About that, Bulk," Wheeljack drawled, and I frowned. "Now that my ship's repaired, I'm itching to know what else is I might find out there." "Well, that is a reason I can agree with." I sighed, and saw the others run up. "Wait," Maiko said, running up between them, "you're leaving?" "Why?" Jackie looked at them, furrowing his optical ridges. "Oh." Bulkhead sighed, making Wheeljack look at him, "because some bots never change." He chuckled, smiling. "Wheeljack," Optimus smiled, making me squeal on the inside, "know that you'll always have a haven here." He looked at me, and his mouth twitched upward, "Or, at least you do if Molly isn't in a bad mood." I growled, and threw a snowball at him. "Jackie never stays," Bulkhead said, hugging Wheeljack, "but he always comes back." I smiled, and looked down in annoyance. "Wait, one more thing," I said, looking at everyone. "Where the hell is my laptop?" I yelled, eyes darting from bot to bot. "Is that what is making that buzzing noise?" Wheeljack questioned, pointing towards a pile of junk. "What?" I growled lowly, looking at him. Ever since I got here there was an annoying buzzing sound that I couldn't get out of my head. Checked it out earlier, and it was a black and silver piece of plastic hidden underneath that pile of equipment. My mouth dropped, and I turned around, and saw a red and white dots of light coming from the corner of the room. I started to sprint towards it, and it was hidden underneath a pile of Ratchet's junk. My laptop. "Ratchet, you motherfucker. You got 5 seconds to get your AFT out of here." I flared, my eyes narrowing to points. I snapped around, sprouting out my claws. Maiko yelled at him to run, but it was too late. AHHH! Ratchet screamed, as I clawed at his helm. This is why you don't take my stuff! I yelled, and scraped the metal across the top of his head. Optimus, get her off me! He shrieked, waving his arms around. I jumped off, and he was still flailing. Wow! Embarrassing! Maiko trailed, watching him run off. I laughed, nodding. His queen. Well, that's the ending of that chapter. I do hope you enjoy this video. If you like to see more, remember to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel and leave a comment down below. Until next time.